Nobody expected salvation to come from the invisible people, the ones they walked past every day without seeing, the ones who cleaned their tables and polished their floors and watched their lives unfold from the background. Nobody expected it to come from a black kid making $8 an hour. But sometimes the only person who can save you is someone who has nothing to lose by telling you the truth. Someone who has already been invisible so long that speaking up feels like the only way to finally be seen. This is the story of a family built on lies. This is the story of a girl who discovered she wasn't who she thought she was. This is the story of a 15-year-old black boy who chose visibility when everything taught him to stay invisible. And this is the story of what happens when perfection finally cracks. Welcome to Thanksgiving at the Harrington Estate. Nothing will ever be the same.
In the wealthy neighborhoods of Greenwich, Connecticut, there's a family that has everything: money, power, status. The Harrington family built their fortune in real estate, 3 generations of wealth, 3 generations of secrets. On Thanksgiving Day, those secrets were about to explode. There's a woman named Charlotte Harrington, a billionaire's wife who's been lying to her entire family for 23 years. There's her husband, Alexander, who has no idea what's coming. There's their adult children, all expecting a perfect holiday dinner. And there's Daniel Rodriguez, 15 years old, a sophomore at Greenwich High School, the son of the family's head housekeeper, Rosa. He works part-time at the estate on weekends, cleaning and helping with events, making enough to help his mother with bills. He has no power, no status, no seat at their table. He's invisible in the way that black workers in wealthy white spaces are invisible, present but not seen, helpful but not valued, known but not known. But when the Harrington family's world implodes at dinner, Daniel will be the only one who can tell them the truth, the only one who knows what really happened, the only one young enough, removed enough, and honest enough to say it. This is the story of how one teenager from the other side of the tracks became the only person this billionaire family could trust. This is the story of secrets, betrayal, redemption, and unexpected grace. This is Thanksgiving Day. Nothing will ever be the same.
Daniel Rodriguez had been working at the Harrington estate for 2 years. In that time, he had become invisible. Not by choice. It was simply the way of things in Greenwich. The help didn't exist until they were needed. You cleaned the marble floors, you polished the silver, you arranged the flowers, and then you disappeared into the background like you were part of the furniture. His mother, Rosa, had taught him the rules when he was younger. Be efficient, be quiet, be invisible, she would say in Spanish during their rides to and from the estate. Don't look at their problems, don't listen to their conversations, don't have opinions, just work and come home. Rosa had been the head housekeeper at the Harrington estate for 15 years. She had raised Daniel alone after his father died when Daniel was 7. Construction accident. One moment of bad luck and their whole life changed. Rosa had worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs to keep them afloat. Now, at 15, Daniel understood her gratitude for this one job. Steady, consistent, with benefits. He also understood the cost of that gratitude, invisibility. Daniel was good at being invisible. At 5'9", athletic, with his mother's sharp eyes and his father's strong shoulders, he could have been noticed, but he dressed plainly. Work clothes, nothing flashy. He kept his head down. He moved quietly through the mansion. He had learned early that being seen was dangerous. The Harrington estate was massive, a 30-room mansion built in 1987, constantly updated, filled with things that cost more than Daniel's family's net worth. There was a kitchen bigger than their entire house, a wine cellar worth millions, an art collection that appeared in magazines. And there was the family. Alexander, the patriarch at 62, with steel gray hair and a permanent scowl. Charlotte, his wife of 25 years, beautiful in the way of women who never had to worry about anything. And their 3 adult children. Grace, 28, married to a hedge fund manager, Christopher, 26, a lawyer in Manhattan, and Victoria, 23, still living at home, perpetually angry. Daniel had watched this family for 2 years. He had learned their rhythms, their tensions, their dynamics, the way all families have dynamics that only outsiders can see clearly. But more than that, Daniel had learned how to truly listen. While his mother cleaned the visible spaces, Daniel cleaned the background, the hallways, the servants' corridors, the spaces where people forgot to perform. And in those spaces, he heard things. He heard Grace telling her husband she didn't want to visit home anymore. He heard Christopher on the phone with a therapist. He heard Victoria's tears at night when she thought no one was listening. And he had noticed something that bothered him every time he noticed it. Victoria looked nothing like Alexander. Not in a subtle way, not in a people say I have my mother's eyes way, in a way that was impossible to ignore if you were paying attention. Where Alexander had steel gray hair, pale skin, and sharp Anglo-Saxon features, Victoria had dark hair, olive skin, and features that seemed out of place in the Harrington family. She looked like she had Spanish heritage. She looked like she could be related to someone with Dominican heritage, like Daniel. But Daniel had never said anything about this. What would he say? He was the housekeeper's son. His observations were not welcome. His thoughts were not valued. He was furniture. The week before Thanksgiving, something changed. Daniel was polishing the mahogany trim in the main hallway after school, his Saturday shift, when he heard voices in the study. The study door was slightly ajar. He should have moved away. He should have been invisible. Instead, he froze. "I can't keep lying to them," a woman's voice said. "Charlotte." "Then don't tell them," a man's voice responded. "Not Alexander. Someone younger, someone unfamiliar." "It's been 23 years, Marcus. 23 years of lying. Our children deserve to know the truth, especially Victoria, especially before—" The door opened suddenly. A man in his late 30s, expensive suit, emerged quickly. He looked shocked to see Daniel standing there. For a moment, their eyes met. The man's face showed guilt, fear, calculation. Then he adjusted his tie and walked past Daniel like he was furniture. Charlotte appeared in the doorway moments later, her face flushed. She also acted like Daniel was invisible, closing the door behind her. Daniel finished polishing the trim, but his hands were trembling. He knew in that moment that something terrible was going to happen. He didn't know what, but he understood with the clarity that comes from being an observer of other people's lives that the Harrington family was about to fracture. He just didn't know that he would be the one caught in the middle when it did. That evening, driving home with his mother, Daniel mentioned that the family seems tense. "Don't get involved," Rosa said immediately in Spanish, the way she always did. "Our job is to clean and to leave, nothing more." "I know, Mommy," Daniel said. But he was already involved. He just didn't know it yet. Later that night, his mother came into his room and sat on his bed. In the dark, she said, "Whatever you see at that house, you keep to yourself. You understand? Those are not our problems. We are not their family. We are the help." "I know," Daniel said. "Do you?" Rosa asked. "Because sometimes I see you watching them, listening, trying to understand them, and I want to tell you, understanding them will not make them see you. It will only make you sad." Daniel didn't know what to say to that. So he just said, "I know, Mommy." But in his heart, he was already preparing, already gathering the pieces of truth he had heard, already becoming, without meaning to, the conscience of a family that had no idea he was paying attention.
Thanksgiving dinner at the Harrington estate was an elaborate production. 2 weeks of planning, a catering team from the city, real china and crystal that came out only for the most important occasions, flower arrangements that cost more than Daniel's monthly income, an 8-course meal beginning with an heirloom appetizer course and ending with 3 different desserts. It was, by any measure, obscene. Daniel and his mother arrived at the estate at noon on Thanksgiving Day to help with final preparations. Rosa had been there since 5 a.m., coordinating the catering team, making sure everything was perfect. Daniel came after school the day before to help arrange the dining room. Rosa was meticulous. Every fork had to be positioned at precisely the right angle. Every piece of crystal had to be positioned at the exact point where the light would hit it and create a certain sparkle. Every flower had to be fresh, arranged to show the family at their best. Daniel understood his mother's perfection. This job was security. This job was survival. One mistake, one fork out of place, one flower wilted, and the Harringtons might decide to find someone else, someone cheaper, someone less particular about details. "Why does it matter so much?" Daniel had asked years ago when he was younger. "Because this is their ritual," Rosa had explained in Spanish. "This is how they show each other they matter, through perfection, through nothing being out of place. If we can help them believe in that perfection, they keep us, they trust us, they keep us employed." Daniel understood now what his mother meant. The Harrington family showed love through perfection, through control, through the elimination of anything messy or real or human. By 6 p.m., the table was ready. Daniel and Rosa changed into their formal uniforms, black suit pants and white shirt for Daniel, a black dress with white apron for Rosa, and took their positions in the kitchen and hallway. They were supposed to be invisible for the next 4 hours. At 6:15 p.m., the family began to arrive. Grace and her husband Trevor, the hedge fund manager with the expensive watch and colder eyes. Christopher with his girlfriend Sarah, a lawyer herself, both of them checking their phones constantly. Victoria, dressed in black, wearing the expression of someone who knew something was wrong but didn't know what. And Alexander and Charlotte, playing the roles of the perfect billionaire couple. Alexander played the jovial patriarch. He made jokes about the stock market. He complimented the table. He poured expensive wine. He was performing perfection. Charlotte was quieter. Her hands shook slightly when she lifted her wine glass. She smiled, but there was something fragile about it, something on the verge of breaking. Daniel noticed all of this while serving the soup course. From his position near the kitchen, he saw everything. Halfway through the main course, a 28-pound turkey that had taken hours to prepare, Victoria asked a simple question. "Mom, why does your phone keep buzzing?" "I'm sure I don't know what you mean, dear," Charlotte said, but her hand had already moved to cover her phone on the side table. "Your phone," Victoria repeated. "Someone's been texting you all day. You keep checking it when you think we're not looking." The table went very quiet. "Victoria," Charlotte said carefully, "this is hardly the appropriate—" "No, I'm serious," Victoria interrupted. "For the past week, you've been weird. You and Dad barely talk. You've been crying. I can hear you in your room at night." "That's quite enough," Alexander said sharply. But Victoria wasn't done. "And I look like neither of you. I've looked like neither of you my whole life, and nobody ever talks about it. It's like this giant thing that everyone ignores." Daniel, standing by the kitchen door with a tray, felt his stomach drop. He exchanged a quick look with his mother. Rosa's face was stone, but her hand found his for just a moment, squeezing once, a warning. Charlotte's face had gone very white. "Victoria, you're being inappropriate," Grace said, her voice sharp. "I'm being real," Victoria snapped back. "For once, someone's being real at this table instead of pretending everything is perfect when clearly it's not." That's when Charlotte's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her entire body tensed. She silenced the call. But then it rang again and again. On the fourth ring, Charlotte answered. She got up from the table and walked toward the hallway, the phone pressed to her ear. But her voice was still audible to everyone. "Yes, I know. I was going to tell them today. No, I can't talk about this now. Stop calling me." She hung up. When she returned to the table, she looked at Alexander directly. "I need to tell them," she said quietly. "It's time." Alexander's face was stone. "I advise against it. I don't care." And watching this family fracture in real time, Daniel realized something. These people, the billionaires with everything, were just as broken as anyone else, maybe more broken, because they had the resources to hide it so well that when it finally came out, the shock was devastating. He thought about his own mother, working in this house for 15 years, never complaining, never breaking, never making her problems into their problems, never lying about who she was or who her son was. And he thought, if you're watching this, subscribe to this channel if you've ever felt like you had to hide who you really are to keep peace. If you've ever sacrificed your truth for someone else's comfort. If you've ever known something true and been too afraid to say it because you might lose your job, lose your home, lose your safety. Because there are people watching who understand that. People who need to know they're not alone in that struggle. People like Daniel, people like Rosa. People who know that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is speak truth when the cost of silence is your own soul. That's what was about to happen at this table. Someone was about to choose truth over perfection, and everything was about to change.
"I'm not biologically your father," Alexander said suddenly, cutting through Charlotte's sentence before she could speak. Everyone at the table froze. "What?" Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "I've known for 23 years," Alexander continued, his voice controlled, clinical. "I've chosen to be your father anyway. I've provided for you, raised you, given you every advantage. I've fulfilled the legal and moral obligations of fatherhood despite this biological complication." The way he said it, biological complication, made Daniel's heart hurt, as if Victoria was a tax deduction that had turned out to be slightly more complicated than expected. "How long have you known?" Grace asked Charlotte, not Alexander. Her voice was ice. "Since she was born," Charlotte said quietly. "So this entire family has been a lie," Christopher said. His jaw was clenched. "You've both been lying to us our entire lives." "The truth would have only caused pain," Charlotte said. "So you decided we couldn't handle the truth?" Victoria's voice cracked. "You decided to make that choice for me, for all of us?" "Victoria," Alexander began. "Don't," Victoria said, standing up from the table. "Don't explain it to me. Don't tell me it was for my own good. You lied, both of you, for 23 years. "Sit down," Alexander commanded. "No," Victoria said. "Who am I, Alexander? Who is my actual father?" Charlotte looked at her phone. "His name is Marcus Jensen. He's been calling me. He wants to meet you. That's why I wanted to tell you today before he showed up, and he's here." Victoria was already moving toward the door. "He's in Greenwich right now?" "Victoria, please." Charlotte reached for her daughter's arm, but Victoria pulled away and left the dining room. For several moments, nobody spoke. Then Grace said, "I need to process this with Trevor. We're leaving." She and her husband stood and left the table. Christopher simply stood, looked at his parents with an utter contempt, and walked out. That left Alexander and Charlotte sitting across from each other at a table set for 8, surrounded by the remnants of their perfect Thanksgiving, alone. Charlotte started to cry, not delicately, but the kind of crying that comes from years of suppression finally breaking. Her entire body shook with it. Alexander didn't move. He didn't comfort her. He simply sat there, eating his turkey as if nothing had happened. In the kitchen, Daniel could hear all of it. His mother had positioned him to continue clearing plates, to remain present and invisible, to witness. Rosa was gripping the counter so hard her knuckles were white. She whispered to Daniel in Spanish, "This is why we stay invisible. This is what happens when you stop hiding." But Daniel was thinking something different. He was thinking, what if hiding is what destroys families? What if lies hidden for 23 years are more dangerous than the truth told once? 15 minutes later, there was a commotion at the front door. Victoria's voice, angry and confused. "You need to leave. How did you even get this address? How did you—" "I'm your father, Victoria. I know this is shocking, but I've been trying to contact your mother for years. She finally agreed to tell you, and I—" "You don't know me," Victoria spat. "You're a stranger who my mother apparently slept with, and now you think you have some claim to my life?"
"Victoria, please, just give me 5 minutes." "No!" There was the sound of the door slamming. Then silence. Daniel looked at his mother. Rosa was staring at the floor, her expression a mixture of sadness and resignation. "We clean up. That is all we do. We clean up." But Daniel was thinking, not this time. Not this time. He didn't know what that meant yet, but he knew with absolute certainty that something inside him had shifted. The invisible boy was beginning to see. And seeing, he was beginning to understand that sometimes you have to stop being invisible to help someone else find their way. The house was quiet the next morning. Daniel arrived at 11 a.m. for his regular Saturday shift. His mother was already there, working silently in the kitchen. The dining room was spotless, the china cleared, the table reset to its original state, as if the Thanksgiving dinner had never happened. "What happened after we left?" Daniel asked Rosa in Spanish, though he already knew from the tension in the house, the closed doors, the absence of sound. "Nothing," Rosa said. "Everything. Who can tell?" She didn't look at him as she worked. "Alexander told us we should leave by midnight. We cleaned, we left. That is all." But Daniel knew it wasn't all. He could feel the tension in the house like a pressure in the air, like holding your breath under water. When he went to dust the study, he found Victoria sitting alone in the dark, staring out the window. She didn't notice him at first. He almost left, maintaining his invisibility, but something made him speak. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Victoria turned to look at him. For a moment she didn't seem to recognize him. Then it registered, the boy from the kitchen, the maid's son, the invisible help. "Do I know you?" she asked without turning around. "I work here on weekends," Daniel said carefully. "I'm Rosa's son, Daniel." "The Rosa who was here last night?" "Yes." Victoria studied him for a long moment. "Did you hear what happened?" Daniel could have lied, could have maintained his invisibility, but something in Victoria's voice, the desperate need for someone, anyone to acknowledge what had happened, made him speak the truth. "Yes," he said quietly, "I heard." Victoria's face crumpled. She started to cry, the kind of crying that comes from shock finally breaking into reality. Daniel stood there, unsure what to do. In his 15 years, he had never been allowed to comfort a wealthy white girl. The rules of invisibility didn't include emotional labor. But Victoria was just a person in pain. So he sat down on the arm of the chair she was sitting in, carefully, respectfully, and just sat with her while she cried. After several minutes, Victoria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What's your name again?" "Daniel," he said. "Daniel Rodriguez." "Daniel," Victoria repeated. "How long have you worked here?" 2 years. "Have you seen my family fall apart before?" "No," Daniel said truthfully, "but I think families always have fractures. Most of the time, people just hide them better." Victoria looked at him. "Why are you being nice to me? You don't know me." "No," Daniel said, "but I know what it feels like to wonder who you really are. I know what it feels like to have someone keep a truth from you, so I understand." "How do you know that?" Victoria asked. Daniel hesitated. He wasn't supposed to share his own life with the family. That was against the rules. But the rules were built on invisibility, and he was tired of being invisible. "My mother keeps a lot of truths from me," Daniel said carefully, "about my father, about why we came to live where we live, about what it means to work in a place like this. I understand that sometimes people hide things to protect you, but I also understand that sometimes being protected means being lied to." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm sorry." "You don't need to apologize to me," Daniel said. "I know, but still, I'm sorry." They sat in silence for a little while longer. Then Victoria said, "My biological father, Marcus, he's staying at a hotel in Stamford. He's been calling my mother. He wants to meet me, but I'm terrified." "Of what?" Daniel asked. "Of him being a stranger, of him expecting me to suddenly call him Dad, of me ruining whatever fantasy he's built in his head about me, of him being disappointed." Daniel considered this. "Maybe you can just meet him and see what happens, without the fantasy, without the expectations." Would you... Victoria started, then stopped. Never mind. What? Daniel asked. Would you... I don't know. Would you help me figure this out? I know I don't know you, and you probably have other things to do, but you seem honest, and I need someone honest right now. Daniel should have said no, should have maintained his professional distance, should have gone back to being invisible furniture. Instead, he said, "Okay, I'll help." Victoria looked at him like he had just offered her a life raft in an ocean she didn't know how to swim in. "Thank you," she whispered, and Daniel, the invisible boy, became visible, not because he changed, but because one person finally saw him clearly.
"He wants to meet you at the Stamford Marriott," Daniel said over the phone. He was calling Victoria from his house after his Saturday shift. It was 7 p.m. His mother was in the other room, and he spoke quietly so she wouldn't hear. "How do you know that?" Victoria asked. "Your mother," Daniel said. "She was talking to her friend on the phone while I was cleaning. She said Marcus wanted to meet you tomorrow. She said the hotel was in Stamford." "He's still in Connecticut?" Victoria sounded shocked. "After I screamed at him?" "I think he's not going anywhere," Daniel said. "I think he came here to stay until he could at least try to meet you." There was a long silence on the phone. "I can't go alone," Victoria said finally. I can't do this alone." "I know," Daniel said. Can you, I know this is asking a lot, but could you come with me tomorrow, just to the lobby or something, just so I don't have to walk in there completely alone?" Daniel wanted to say no, wanted to explain the impossibility of it, the rules that said he couldn't be seen in public with her, the assumption people would make about a 15-year-old black boy with a 23-year-old white girl. But he also knew that sometimes the only way to break systems of invisibility is to refuse to follow the rules. "Okay," he said, "I'll come." The next morning, Daniel met Victoria at the Stamford Marriott. She drove her own car, a Range Rover worth more than everything Daniel's family owned combined. "I'm nervous," Victoria said when they were 15 minutes away. "I know," Daniel said. "What if I don't like him? What if he's, I don't know, weird or demanding or expecting me to suddenly call him Dad?" "Then you don't like him," Daniel said simply. "You don't have to pretend." "But he's my biological father. That has to mean something." "Does it?" Daniel asked. "Your mother and Alexander raised you. They taught you who you are. That's what makes someone your parent. Biology is just biology." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then, "Your father, are you close to him?" "He died when I was 7, Daniel said. "He worked construction. He fell off a roof. So I don't really have a biological father anymore either." "I'm sorry," Victoria said. "It's okay," Daniel said. "My mother, she's both for me. She's the parent. Gender doesn't matter, just the love does." They arrived at the Marriott at 10:30 a.m. Marcus Jensen was waiting in the lobby. He was in his late 50s, with gray temples and tired eyes. When he saw Victoria, something in his face shifted. Recognition, love, fear, all at once. Daniel stayed at the edge of the lobby, sitting in a comfortable chair, reading a book he'd brought, but not really reading. He was present, but not present, invisible, but visible, exactly what Victoria needed. He couldn't hear their conversation, but he could see their faces. He could see Marcus explaining something, his hands moving carefully, his eyes wet with emotion. He could see the moment Victoria decided this man was not her enemy. He was just a man who had wanted to know her. After 20 minutes, Marcus and Victoria stood. Marcus hugged her, carefully, respectfully, asking with his body before taking. Victoria let him. Then she walked back across the lobby to where Daniel was sitting. "He seems nice," she whispered. "Yeah," Daniel agreed. "I think I want to get to know him. Is that crazy?" "No," said Daniel. "That's brave." And watching Victoria process this, watching her choose compassion over anger, understanding over judgment, Daniel realized something he wanted to share with anyone watching this story. There are people in your life right now who are carrying secrets you don't know about, people who have made mistakes, told lies, chosen wrong.
and your choice, whether to stay angry or to try to understand, matters more than you know. If you're watching this, I want you to think about someone you've been angry with, someone you've judged harshly, someone who hurt you or lied to you, and I want you to consider subscribing to this channel, because if you're the kind of person who can learn compassion from watching someone else's story, then you need to be part of a community that values that, a community that understands that forgiveness is harder than judgment and more valuable. Subscribe not for me, but for yourself, because growth requires watching other people grow, and sometimes it takes a 15-year-old black kid and a billionaire's daughter figuring out how to be human together to remind you what that looks like.
When Victoria returned to the Harrington estate after meeting Marcus, her family was waiting for her. Not all of them. Grace was still at her apartment in the city, refusing to engage with the situation. Christopher was back at his office in Manhattan, drowning himself in work. But Alexander and Charlotte were in the living room, waiting. "Where have you been?" Alexander demanded. "Meeting my biological father," Victoria said calmly. "You remember him, the one Mother slept with." "Victoria!" Charlotte's voice was pleading. "I don't want to hear it," Victoria cut her off. "I've made a decision. I want to know him. I want to know who he is, where he comes from, what he's about, and I want you both to support that decision." "That's not your father," Alexander said coldly. "I'm your father." "You're not," Victoria said, meeting his eyes for the first time. "Legally, you might be. Biologically, you're not. And emotionally, I'm not sure you ever were. Because a real father tells the truth instead of hiding it for 23 years. Alexander's face flushed with anger. "I have given you everything. You've given me a lie. That's all. A beautiful lie, but a lie nonetheless." "What do you want from us?" Charlotte asked desperately. "I want honesty. I want you to tell me why you lied. I want you to explain to my siblings why we've been living in a fantasy. And I want you to stop treating my biological father like he's some kind of threat. He's just a man who wants to know his daughter." "He's a complication. He's my father," Victoria said. Alexander stood. "You're making a mistake. This man will disappoint you. He will prove to be unworthy of your attention." "Maybe," Victoria said, "but that's my mistake to make, not yours to prevent." That evening, Daniel was leaving the estate after his Saturday shift when Victoria found him in the hallway. "I told them I want to know Marcus," she said without preamble. "I told them I won't stay in this family if they don't accept that." "That was brave," Daniel said. "That was stupid," Victoria corrected. "I have no money of my own. My trust fund doesn't come until I'm 25. If they cut me off, I have nothing." "Do you want me to say it's going to be okay?" Daniel asked. "No," Victoria said. "I want to know it's going to be hard, but worth it." Daniel smiled slightly. "It's going to be hard, but worth it." Victoria sat down on a bench in the hallway. Daniel sat beside her, carefully maintaining appropriate distance. He was still, fundamentally, the help. "My parents won't talk to me," Victoria said quietly. "They're both in their rooms. My siblings are refusing my calls. It's like the whole family is in quarantine." "They will come around," Daniel said. "How do you know?" "I don't," Daniel said, "but I know that families are resilient, especially families with the resources to get therapy." Victoria laughed despite herself. "What are you going to do now?" Daniel asked. "I don't know," Victoria said. "Meet Marcus, get to know him, figure out who I really am instead of who I thought I was. What about you? Are you going to keep working here?" Daniel thought about it. 2 years of invisibility. 2 years of watching this family from the outside, noticing things they couldn't see about themselves. 2 years of learning that sometimes the most important thing you can do is see clearly. So, he said, "I'm thinking about it. Maybe this job has served its purpose. Maybe it's time to move on to something else." "Don't leave because of this. Please. I know you're supposed to be invisible, but you've been the only real person in this family for the past few days." Daniel didn't know what to say to that. So he just said, "I'll stay for now." But he was thinking, nothing lasts. Moments shift. Invisible people become visible, and then the moment passes, and they become invisible again. The best you can do is be present while you're needed. So he would stay. For now. 2 weeks later, Christopher came home. He didn't call ahead. He just arrived at the estate in the middle of the day, looking exhausted. "I need to talk to all of you," he announced. "In the study, now." Alexander, Charlotte, Grace, who had returned from the city, and Victoria gathered in the study. Daniel was cleaning the hallway outside. He heard every word. He shouldn't have listened, but he did. And what he heard changed something in him. "I've been going to a therapist," Christopher began, "because this situation has made me realize something about our family. We're broken. We're fundamentally, deeply broken. And not because Mom had an affair 23 years ago, but because we've built our entire existence on lies and pretense and the belief that perfection is more important than honesty." "Christopher, that's quite enough," Alexander began. "No, Dad, it's not enough. It's barely the beginning." Christopher looked at each of them. "I've spent the last 2 weeks telling myself that Mom lied because she's a terrible person, but that's not true. She lied because she was terrified, and that lie affected all of us. It made us all a little bit terrified of being honest, a little bit ashamed of being human." Grace was crying silently. "I forgive you," Christopher said, looking at his mother. "I don't know if you're asking for forgiveness, but I'm offering it, because I can't spend my life being angry at you for being human." He looked at Alexander. "And I want to know, did you ever actually love Mom, or was this just an arrangement? Because I need to know if love is actually possible in this family, or if we've just been performing it all this time." Alexander looked away. "I tried," he said finally. "When we first married, I loved her, but over time that love became less important than the image of love, the appearance of it. And by the time Victoria was born, the image was all that was left." It was, Daniel thought, listening from the hallway, the most honest thing he'd ever heard Alexander say. "So what are you proposing?" Charlotte asked her son. "I'm proposing we stop pretending. I'm proposing we go to family therapy, real therapy, where we talk about what we actually feel instead of what we're supposed to feel. I'm proposing Victoria gets to know Marcus without guilt. I'm proposing we learn what it actually means to be family instead of just living in the same house and pretending." "That will take months, years maybe." "Yes," said Christopher, "but at least it will be real." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Alexander said, "I'll do it, for the family." When they left the study, they found Daniel standing in the hallway holding a dustcloth. "How long have you been listening?" Victoria asked. "Long enough," Daniel said. "I'm sorry." "Why?" "I'm the help. I'm supposed to see and hear everything, and I never tell." "But you're going to tell," Victoria said. It wasn't a question. "No," Daniel said, "but I'm going to think about it, and think about what it all means." That evening, Rosa found Daniel in the kitchen after the family had gone to bed. "You're getting too involved," she said in Spanish. "I know," Daniel said. "This is not our place." "I know that too," Daniel said. "But something's changing, Mommy, with this family. They're choosing honesty, and that's rare. That's worth paying attention to." Rosa was quiet for a moment. She came and stood beside him and put her hand on his shoulder. "You see things clearly," she said in Spanish, "because you've been invisible. But I'm afraid, mijo. I'm afraid that once you stop being invisible, you can't go back. And the world is not kind to people like us who refuse to disappear." "I know, Mommy," Daniel said, "but maybe that's okay. Maybe it's time to stop disappearing." Rosa pulled him close. "Then I will disappear with you, whatever comes." And Daniel understood in that moment that his mother had been waiting for permission to stop performing invisibility, permission to be seen, permission to claim her full humanity in a space that never asked her to. He had given her that permission by refusing to be invisible first.
5 years later, Daniel Rodriguez was 20 years old.
He had finished his sophomore year at Connecticut State University, studying business administration. He worked part-time at a small consulting firm in Hartford, helping small businesses improve their operations. It wasn't glamorous, but it was his. The Harrington family had transformed completely. Victoria had thrived. She had taken a year after her identity crisis to get to know Marcus, and they had built a real relationship. Complicated, beautiful, worth it. Then she had gone to University of Connecticut, studied social work, and after graduation, started a nonprofit focused on helping families navigate difficult truths and rebuild trust. The organization was called Visible, Families Beyond Lies. Victoria ran it. Alexander and Charlotte were still together, but their marriage looked different now. More honest, less performed. They were in ongoing therapy. They still had money and status, but those things mattered less to them than connection. Grace's marriage to Trevor had ended. It turned out it was built on performance too, but she had found someone genuine, and they were building something real. Christopher had gotten married to Sarah, and they were genuinely happy in a way they hadn't been before. They were talking about children. And Rosa was still the head housekeeper at the Harrington estate, but she was different now. She had asked for a raise. She had demanded respect. She had stopped performing gratitude and started demanding dignity. And the Harringtons, who had learned their own lessons about honesty and humanity, had given it to her.
The documentary about the Harrington family came out 3 years later. It was called Visible, named after Victoria's organization. It told the story of a family built on lies, a girl who discovered the truth, and a young man who helped them all learn to be honest. But it also told much larger stories, the story of invisibility in America, the story of class and race, and the ways systems are designed to keep certain people hidden. The story of what happens when people refuse to perform their assigned roles anymore. The documentary was nominated for awards. It was watched by thousands. Families reached out, asking for help. The organization that Victoria had started with barely any funding was suddenly flooded with requests. And Daniel, who had never wanted to be visible, found himself visible anyway, not because of fame, but because his story mattered. Because his refusal to stay invisible had given permission to other people to refuse it too. At 25 years old, Daniel was invited to speak at universities. He talked about invisibility and power. He talked about what it means to be a young black man in spaces not designed for him. He talked about courage and speaking truth even when you're not supposed to. After one speech at Yale, a young woman approached him. "Your story changed my life," she said. "I was hiding who I was because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. But after I watched your documentary, I decided to be honest. I told my family I was gay, and they accepted me. And I would never have done that without knowing that you chose visibility first." Daniel didn't know what to say, so he just said, "Thank you for telling me that." That night, he called his mother. "Your son is changing the world," Rosa said in Spanish. "No, Mommy," Daniel said. "I'm just telling the truth." "Exactly," Rosa said. "That's how you change the world, one truth at a time, one person at a time, one person refusing to stay invisible." And if you're watching this story, I want you to know something. You have been invisible for a long time. Maybe because of your race, maybe because of your class, maybe because who you love or what you believe, maybe because you made a choice to hide in order to survive in a world that wasn't designed for you to be seen. But I'm here to tell you, visibility is possible. It's terrifying, it's risky, but it's also the only way to be free. Subscribe to this channel, not for me, but for yourself.
because you need to be reminded that your story matters, that your truth matters, that the person you are, your full, authentic self, is worthy of being seen and loved. Subscribe because the world needs you to be visible. The world needs your voice. The world needs the truth that only you can speak. This is what Daniel learned. This is what Victoria learned. This is what the entire Harrington family learned. That invisibility is a prison, and visibility is freedom. And sometimes all it takes is one person refusing to be invisible first to give permission to everyone else. So here's my challenge to you. Be someone's Daniel. Be the person who sees clearly and speaks truth. Be the person who refuses to play along with lies anymore. Be the person who chooses authenticity over perfection. Because that person, that brave, visible, honest person, is worth more than all the lies in the world. Subscribe, and then go be visible too.